My name is Prophet MaShani Allen. Today is September 2nd, 2025. And this is a prophetic assessment from about the culture, the status of mainly the apostolic and the prophetic. But it's a prophetic assessment from 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. We're coming from 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. I will say this. This isn't to a particular person, group, or network. This is an overall prophetic assessment. But although it is not to an individual person or particular group or network, this applies to a lot of people. It applies to a lot of people. Because this is the truth. It's time for us to stop minimizing the role that leaders have and the impact of their disobedience. And when I say roles and when I say leaders, I am talking about apostles, prophets, pastors, evangelists, and teachers. But this doesn't just apply to them, but that's specifically who I am talking about in this case with this prophetic assessment. So this morning, I did my praying and I was laying there meditating just on God. Nothing in particular, hadn't picked up my Bible yet or anything like that. But while I was laying there, 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter came to mind. And I am very familiar with 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. Very familiar with 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter. Because that particular chapter has a verse that is like a gem in my heart that helps me stay humble and helps me stay focused. But while 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter came to mind, it wasn't based on the verse that I normally pay attention to. So I'm going to be reading and sharing at the same time. Let me actually read it. Read the first verse because that'll give us some context. And I am reading from the New King James Version, MacArthur Study Bible. So it says in 1 Samuel 15, chapter 1, Samuel also said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people Israel. Now therefore, heed the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when they came up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." Verse 4, so Saul gathered the people together and numbered them. Now, the first thing that we see in 1 Samuel 15 is an introduction of the prophet Samuel stating that he was sent to anoint Saul as king and gave him very specific instructions to complete. Very specific instructions. I'm not going to read it all, but by the time we get to verse 9, we see and we learn that Saul did some, but not all, that he was commanded to do. What he did do was completely disobedient. The verses that were highlighted to me this morning were verse 11 and verse 12. And I'm going to read it in the New King James Version, and then I'll read it in the Message. No, I'll start with verse 10. This is after, you know what? No, let me read verse 7. And Saul attacked the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is east of Egypt. He also took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good, and were unwilling to utterly destroy them, but everything despised and worthless, that they utterly destroyed. Now, verse 10, 11, and 12 is what was highlighted to me this morning. Now the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I greatly regret that I have set up Saul as king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night. Now the Message version says, Samuel was angry when he heard this. He prayed his anger and disappointment all through the night. He got up early in the morning to confront Saul, but was told, Saul's gone. He went to Carmel to set up a victory monument in his own honor, and then was headed for Gilgal. By the time Samuel caught up with him, Saul had just finished an act of worship, having used Amalekite plunder for the burnt offerings sacrificed to God. Did y'all hear that? Let me read it again in the New King James. So when Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul went to Carmel, and indeed he set up a monument for himself. And he has gone on around, passed by, and gone down to Gilgal. Listen, by the time Samuel reached him, Saul had just completed an act of worship, sacrificing offerings using the very plunder that God had told him to destroy. Now we must understand, in those days, only priests were permitted to offer sacrifices. We read in verse 1 that Saul was anointed king, yet he stepped into the office of priest, unauthorized and unqualified. He used the fruit of disobedience for an offering on the altar. He built a monument to himself and not to God. Now, one thing that came to me was this. To anyone else who was watching Saul build, they may not have seen anything wrong with him building this altar, but the assignment wasn't given to them. The word of the Lord was given to him. So what looked like a good thing and what looked like a God thing was actually a full account and act of disobedience. So the question that came to me regarding this passage and looking at an assessment of the church through a prophetic lens was this: what happens when people step outside of the role they were anointed for? What happens when you are anointed for one thing but operating in another? There are many in leadership walking around with a plethora of titles, but what have they really been anointed for? Could it be that we are witnessing downfalls not due to a lack of charisma or gifting, but because the people have redefined obedience to fit their own ambitions? Are we watching individuals applaud themselves, building platforms and monuments as if they have fulfilled the Lord's instructions, when in reality, they did not? Have they built monuments on foundations of disobedience? Is God now sending pure prophets, ones with no agenda, to confront the bleating of the sheep? You find that in verse 14, that echoes in the ears. That was not a sound of worship. It was the sound of rebellion masked as sacrifice. Now, when we get to 1 Samuel, verse 23, it says, now mind you, this is after Saul was confronted by Samuel. You know what? Why don't I do this? Why don't I read it? We're going to start at verse 13. Then Samuel went to Saul, and Saul said to him, "Blessed are you of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord." But Samuel said, "What then is the bleating of sheep in my ears, and the lowing of oxen which I hear?" And Saul said, "They have bought them from the Amalekites. For the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed." Then Samuel said to Saul, "Be quiet, and I will tell you what the Lord said to me last night." And he said to him, "Speak on." So Samuel said, "When you were little in your own eyes, were you not the head of the tribes of Israel? And did not the Lord anoint you king over Israel? Now the Lord sent you on a mission and said, 'Go utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed.' Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you swoop down on the spoil and do evil in the sight of the Lord?" And Saul said to Samuel, But I have obeyed the voice of the Lord and gone on the mission which the Lord sent me, and brought back Agag, the king of Amalek. I have utterly destroyed the Amalekites, but the people took the plunder, the sheep and the oxen, the best of the things, which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice to the Lord your God. He's not even owning God right now. He's so in rebellion and disobedience. To sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. So Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also has rejected you from being king. So I have some questions and some things for you to ponder and to consider. Are today's pure prophetic voices recognizing assignments that were given to leaders and those in authority that have been left incomplete or disobeyed? Are those who once stood in authority now being divinely rejected, not by people, but by God, because they have rebelled in their hearts, even while offering sacrifices in his name? Yes, these are hard questions, but we must begin to consider them. Too much is happening simultaneously in the world, in the church, and in leadership for this to be a mere coincidence. It is time to see beyond flesh, beyond popularity, beyond longevity and legacy, and look deeply into the heart of the matter. When you get a moment, I encourage you to read 1 Samuel 15 in its entirety. Selah, pause, ponder, and consider. Now, there are a few more things that I have to say. Although Samuel loved Saul, he did not allow a soul tie to keep him silent in regards to speaking what thus saith the Lord. He did not allow a soul tie to keep him silent in regards to his behavior. He did not allow a soul tie to not allow him to speak in regards to the way he disobeyed the Lord. Let me explain something that I don't think we always put together. Now, I was talking to one of my brothers who's a prophet in Chicago, and he said something that really hit home and brought this together. What we have to understand is this. Samuel was raised in the house of God. Samuel was under the tutelage and the training of Eli. Samuel had first-hand knowledge, insight, and perspective of what happens when a leader is silent. Samuel witnessed his leader get fat. Samuel witnessed his leader be blind. Samuel witnessed what happens when a father figure does not correct his sons. He witnessed accountability being avoided, and he saw the damage and the cost that comes with not doing what you were positioned, called, and placed to do. He witnessed the demise of Eli. Samuel remained pure despite his love. Samuel remained righteous despite his love. Samuel remained holy despite his love. Yes, he grieved, but he did not allow his feelings to bring an entanglement to cause him to disobey. You've heard me mention the pure ones. And on January 27th of this year, the Lord gave me a prophetic word about the pure ones. And this is what he said. The pure ones. Some are unknown, while others were pulled away. They were pulled away from platforms, mics, and stages to purify the poor, mature the motives, sensitize the senses, declutter the discernment, heal the hurt, wash the witness, cleanse the clutter, sanctify the soul, renew the resolve, fortify the flame, and elevate the awe, reverence, and fear to where Jesus and Jesus alone is glorified and exalted. Their hands have been cleansed through persecution. Their hearts have been washed through the word. Their motives have been refined in the refiner's fire, and he is their only desire. The pure ones are coming. The pure ones are here. They are of all ages and races. They are of all intellects and dialects. They are flames that will not be extinguished. They are voices that cannot be bought. They are eyes that see clearly and ears that hear purely. They are his, and they speak to him and for him in power, authority, and love. They are coming with his agenda. They are coming with his heart and his will. They will not be manipulated or manipulative. They will be pure, they will be distinct, and they will be holy. The pure ones are coming, and the pure ones are here. Because unfortunately, we have too many who are operating like Saul. They have built monuments and altars to themselves. What Saul did wasn't just a sin, it was wickedness. And we have to stop minimizing sin and wickedness. There's sin, there's transgression, and there's wickedness. Too many are excusing wickedness. Your silence is speaking. Your silence is agreeing with wickedness. The Spirit-filled Bible commentary states that verses 14 through 21 reveal the tragic character and weakness in Saul. First, he claims to have obeyed. Then he blames the people. Then he seeks to justify himself and still blame the people. This is a picture of poor leadership. He was self-centered, he was self-willed, and disobedient. Instead of confessing his sin, he continued to justify himself. In 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter, verse 24, is what I believe, unfortunately, a lot of leaders who should be leading, they are operating under. Saul said, verse B, in part B, he said, because I feared the people and obeyed their voices. The difference between Saul and Samuel is Samuel feared God, but Saul feared people. And that fear caused him to lose everything. The commandment that Saul was given came with a plethora of consequences. Now, the reason why I have to say this is because too many people are minimizing the consequences that come when leaders disobey. We take it too lightly, the weight, the responsibility, and the call that comes when you are chosen, and the consequences that come when you don't fully walk in all aspects of that call. It requires truth above relationship. It requires obedience above connections. And this thing can still and should be done in love. But I am appalled that we are minimizing not just sin, but wickedness. But let me paint a picture that I don't think enough people consider. Because we can read 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter, and we can know that Saul disobeyed. But one thing that very few people consider is the ripple effect and the implications and the devastation that came as the result of a called one, of an anointed one, of a king, of a leader, disobeying the word, instructions, and commandment of the Lord. Saul's failure to fully obey God in 1 Samuel 15 by sparing King Agag and keeping the best of the Amalekite plunder had a far-reaching spiritual, political, and generational consequence. Let me break it down for you. First of all, Saul's anointing and kingship was rejected. The spiritual impact: God rejected Saul as king. Though he remained in position for a time, he was no longer in divine authority. Let me say that again. Though he remained in position for a time, Saul was no longer in divine authority. His disobedience caused a leadership shift. His disobedience caused Saul to no longer hear clearly from God, which increased him walking in confusion, paranoia, and darkness. Number 2, Samuel's prophetic relationship with Saul was severed. After confronting Saul, Samuel never saw him again until the day of his death. Samuel mourned deeply for Saul, not only because of his rebellion, but likely because of everything that this leader, this king, this called one, this anointed one, what his disobedience would unleash. Number 3, the Amalekites survived and continued to harm Israel. It is 5 centuries, not months, not years, not decades, 5 centuries between the instruction to kill King Agag and Haman. 5 centuries of pain, of punishment, and of harm, because the leader did not obey. Number 4, because of this king's disobedience, false worship entered the equation. Saul took the plunder that God had said to destroy and offered it to him. Saul acted as if worship could cover disobedience. It introduced a distorted view of worship, one rooted in self-justification and not surrender. Number 5, self-glorification was exposed. He built a monument to himself. It marked a dangerous shift from God-honoring leadership to self-exaltation. And his pride exposed a heart that valued reputation over righteousness. Number 6, it opened the door for David's rise and Saul's fall. Number 7, Saul's mind and spirit began to deteriorate. Number 8, I'm not even going to read all of this. The kingdom suffered spiritually and politically. All of that was the consequence of a leader's disobedience. It wasn't small, it wasn't light, and it wasn't short. So anyone who carries a title, anyone who walks in an office, anyone who is being used and people are following you regardless of the degree. If you are living in sin and error, repent. If you are operating in outright obedience, sit down. It is not worth the sheep being damaged, being hurt, being abused for your own selfish motives. Where is the fear? Where is the fear of the Lord? Where? Because something is so wrong that these different circumstances and situations can be met with silence. Something is so wrong. And God is not pleased. If he was not pleased with with Saul, you can't tell me he's pleased with many of whom we are seeing right now. My prayer for any leader that is silent, my prayer for any leader that will not take a stance, my prayer for any leader who is operating like Eli, who allowed the sons and daughters to do wickedness in the house of God, my prayer is for the fear of the Lord to come upon you, for the weight of the responsibility of the call to cause such an arrest in your spirit, for a greater reverence for who God is, and for the pride and the rebellion to be broken. Because Saul didn't get it. And I pray that you don't get to that point, that you still make excuses and you still put it on the sheep or blame others, as opposed to standing up in the fullness of all that comes with the responsibility of being a sent one and being a called one. The pure ones are here, and they are speaking, and they are sharing, and they have nothing to lose because they're coming from a place of righteousness, from a place of purity, and genuinely from a place of love. It is unacceptable what is taking place. It is unacceptable what is being glossed over. It is unacceptable what is being silenced. I pray that you hear this, and I pray that you heed, and I pray that you respond accordingly. It's heavy, but it has to be, because so is the call, and so is the weight, and so is the responsibility that has been given to you. Again, this isn't for one particular person, but it applies to many. I'm going to leave that right there. I'm going to leave that right there. And on that note, I'm going to have to go. Because it pains me to see so many hurting, and those who could, and those who should not doing, not saying, and not loving. My Bible says that when Jesus saw the multitudes, that he was moved with compassion. Should we not do the same? And compassion is not something that you do in silence.